When I watch the opening on YouTube, it's so cringy that I can't even get through it.
All right. How do you want to do it?
So there's two ways to start podcasts, just to simplify. Either you get right into it, you give the people what they want immediately, you just get to the facts.
Wow.
And to the stories, into the outline, into like, this is what we're going to cover today. Or you do a bunch of like, hey, I walk my dog today kind of stuff.
Is that what we always do?
Here's the thing. This podcast is all about stumbling forward, or maybe not even forward, stumbling around.
It's like waiting for Godot.
Yeah, just dumber. There's your cold open.
There's your cold open. There we go.
All right. Welcome to People vs. Algorithms, a show about detecting patterns in media, technology, and culture. We're going to get right into the topics today. Okay. So I want to talk.
What a list you've got, Brian. My goodness.
This slows it down, Troy. We want to get into
I'm
it.
late to the podcast, Brian, because I felt the need to digest your media people story before we got on. That you can just fart out things like that is amazing to me. How long
I stole the idea from you. And we're going to talk about media people.
You 1,000% stole it from me, but I could never have written it like you.
This is great. This is how the creative production process works. We're going to talk about what makes a media person and why media people matter. You know, I spent a lot of time talking with media people. It's not the easiest time out there for media people. I had a drink with one last night, and I did the, how's Q4 going? And it's like a normal question. And he's like, it reminds me of early March 2020. I was like, oh, this isn't going well. So it's a tough time for media people. We're going to talk about what makes media people and why they're so valuable. And we're going to have Anonymous Banker join us a little bit later, talk about the different AI shifts and whatnot. But let's start off. I want to start off.
We're having a Christmas party.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I forgot. Alex, this is important for you.
Yeah, first time I hear this.
Yeah. So we're having a holiday party, not a Christmas party. We're not totally back with that yet.
You like the name I came up with?
Yeah. What was it again?
Holiday protocols.
Holiday protocols. Troy has it took him weeks to create a direct and to actually execute on the invitation. It's going to be on December 15th. We're partnering, I guess so. We're holding it with Joe Marchese at Casa Comos, which is actually an office, but it turns into a nightclub later in the day, I guess, in the evening. And there'll be tequila. I am going to try to get a Santa there. I met a Santa at a holiday party last year, and he connected with me on LinkedIn. So I have to find him in my LinkedIn connections.
Maybe it's been recruited by Netflix for their new.
You're the good guy.
What is there? It's an immersive experience. What is it called actually?
It's an immersive experience. We're going to get to the Netflix thing, but Alex, we want to have you there. So hopefully you only fly business class, right?
No, it doesn't matter. Alex can get there.
Does he fly econ?
We've been making jokes on the side about this, Alex. Brian thinks it's really funny to have you on one of those iPad robot things that wheel around.
Telepresence robots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that.
So that's the backup plan. If you can't come in person on December 15th, we're going to get a telepresence robot. Because you know that Edward Snowden goes around, he used to go around conferences.
So I'm your Edward Snowden. So what's this thing? Is it? I mean, who's invited? Is it just?
It's all the people.
It's an invitation-only list of media people.
And it's happening when?
You'll be extremely uncomfortable and probably awkward.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll be awkward because that's my calling card. Apparently, I realized that last night. I went to a couple of media people parties, and I still don't think I'm awkward at them. But I think it can present as awkward because when people ask, "Oh, how are things going?" as just a pat, I give them an actual answer.
Well, you can't do this in America, as I've learned. When people ask you what's in America, you don't really answer it.
Yeah, people look at me very strange.
I definitely default to too much information when someone asks me that.
Yeah. Well, people should stop asking that question if they don't want the answer.
Exactly.
I'm going to be like honest about how things are going. It's not all good. There's some bad. There's a lot of good. And that's just how it
When
goes.
someone says to you that doesn't know you, Brian, they say, so what do you do for a living? Which is another classic American intro. What do you say? Do you say media entrepreneur? What do you say? Influencer?
I don't know. I stumble over that question. Depends on and the context.
Well, it's a friend of your parents and they say, hey, Brian, what do you do?
You run webinars?
Well, that's only part of my existence.
Pays the bills, though.
Yeah, B2B influencer. No, I don't know.
No,
media
no
person.
way.
Answer for an older questioner. I'm a journalist. Is that the?
Yeah. I'll default. However, like I was with a journalist gathering last night, and you should never put that on any sort of immigration form, no matter what you're traveling, because it freaks out.
Oh, that's great. No, sorry.
It freaks out them out. Like even in Japan, I got like pulled over in Japan.
No, but I mean, if you respond to one of your parents' friends at the retirement community, and you say I'm a journalist. It's not like I'm an attorney, but it's not bad. It's not terrible.
No, it's not.
Have you ever seriously
don't
told
think.
a real human being that you were a B2B influencer with a straight face? You get to choose what you say, and you should never choose that.
I've said it jokingly, but
Oh yeah, sure.
But look, whatever the title is, I want to talk about this sort of in an indirect way. So
he wants to move on.
I do want to move on. I want to talk about the jobs and the AI bubble, and also the problem with men. I mean, what better? I mean, finally, we have three middle-aged men to talk about the crisis that is facing men. This is something that we are, completely qualified to talk about. So let's talk about the job losses that keep coming. Paramount is cutting another 1,600 people. Our friend Jason Calacanis had laid out a pretty good case of the job displacement tsunami that is coming from mostly, I think, from AI. But a lot of these job cuts, it's really unclear if AI is just the excuse. And we've talked about this a lot. Troy, what do you think is going on here? Because we've talked about, there are a lot of cuts coming, particularly to what I would call the creative production fields. They always go first. I mean, when we look at these massive combinations of like ad holding companies, we talked about this the other week. I mean, there's going to be some massive job displacement. I mean, when Amazon how many people did Amazon put on the street?
Well, it was 30,000, but
30,000.
The shocking news about it was that 16,000 of them were front office workers, and that makes the kind of managerial class shudder.
So I talk with people all the time who are, there's the headline sort of unemployment numbers. And I feel like a lot of people feel this way about the economy overall, and that's why there's this meme that it's like a fake in some ways. And that I talk with a lot of people who've been out of work for a long time. And they're starting to wonder, because a lot of them, I'm a middle-aged man, so I attract middle-aged men. A lot of them are at a point of their career where that's a tough thing. You're out of work for 2 years. You start to wonder if you're ever going to have a full-time job again, really. What do you think is underneath all of this, Troy?
It strikes me that it's a lot of things. I think it's going to be really difficult for us to put our finger on exactly what AI displacement means in terms of real job loss. But I do think that we're in this kind of phase of this kind of compression phase or efficiency phase in the economy where both by sort of case study and by, kind of deployment of more and more powerful tools, be it AI or other, and maybe just the kind of realization that the responsibility of employment should not be a kind of, moral flag that is owned and held by the employer, that there's a willingness to kind of, see what you can get away with. And so maybe it's because there's less sort of real organic kind of growth opportunities in the economy, and the way to get to results is to do it through efficiency. Maybe it's because we had this belief that a kind of hierarchical structure in organizations was just the way to do things, and you had to have a person that had the reports, and that person had the reports, and it created a lot of maybe unnecessary jobs, maybe because we believed that there was a responsibility for corporations to employ people. all of these, and maybe it's just, AI efficiency, all of it together, I think and one other thing, I think that, I don't know if this is a new thing, but it feels to me like 28-year-olds can do what 58-year-olds can do. Like when I fund a company or when I work with young entrepreneurs, like, I try to do the thing like, I've seen this before, or, let me give you my wisdom, or, but like, I don't know that much. And they're like so smart and they have so many better tools and they're so efficient that like, you don't need an old guy that makes a lot of money. You don't need me. And so, yeah, that's extremely difficult if you don't have something to fall back on. I do think that it really is going to impact a lot of people in their 50s that were kind of banking on, a good paying job at like giving them something to save, or maybe they waited to too late. But yeah, I think it's going to create a huge amount of anxiety. It's real. And by the way, we see it profoundly because it's obviously hitting media, and now it's about to hit advertising in a massive way.
And a Redditor did an analysis on 180,000 job openings and, tried to parse that as far as what AI is truly displacing. And what I know is like the creative production jobs. I don't know how to describe it, whether that's designer, marketer, journalist, even writers, that those have been hit the hardest, by far. Alex, any thoughts on this before we go into other topics?
Yeah, no, I think it's a bunch of stuff like Troy said. I think on the creative production jobs specifically, I feel like a lot of times when people are talking about AI, they're just talking about software getting better. And not only software getting better, but actually enterprise really integrating new tools. Maybe it was influenced by AI. If you're kind of seeing the world around you change and people talk about this magical technology, it might, motivate you to just start using the tools you already have. A lot of these production jobs, if you were in creative fields, you would know that a lot of it was, people pushing rocks uphill, right? Like just cutting stuff up into different sizes and doing copyright reviews and making sure the colors are right. And all of that stuff, even without AI, things that computers can do really well. But there was a lot of, when the company is kind of charging billing for this time, or it's kind of part of the infrastructure, it's hard to upend these things, But with those pressures, I think people started looking inwards and noticing, we can cut hours of this process. And I think that's what's happening now. So sometimes when people talk about AI, I think it's like, yes, there is AI, but I think a lot of things is just people getting more efficient, actually getting more efficient.
And so that's why it seems to me that the compression is happening at the both ends. So like, the guys who want to get paid a lot and the people who want to get paid a lot in their 50s and they're looking at like maxing out their 401ks are getting compressed because a lot of the managerial ranks are being thinned. And I believe that is going to continue. And maybe there's a little bit of an AI story to that, but I mean, my working hypothesis is this is a Silicon Valley story. I mean, we have seen throughout the last generation that managerial techniques and trends that began in Silicon Valley wash over the entire economy. I go back to the snacks. We had a vending machine at Adweek in a stairwell. And then all of a sudden, Silicon Valley decided that offices should have snacks. And all of a sudden, snacks appeared until the financial crisis. Then they took away the snacks.
Yeah, I just to wrap this up, I think some people are still seeing this as a phase, though. I do talk to some folks, and it feels
really?
like, well, that like it is still, because I think it happened right at the tail end of the pandemic, which to some people felt like a correction, which it was, right? So it was a kind of a weird wave where there was this massive correction wave, and a lot of folks were, well, the correction is going to happen, and then things are going to even out, but the correction keeps happening. Right. I mean, when Facebook did all those layoffs, people thought that there was a one and done, and they've been rolling layoffs ever since. So this is, to me, like I think it's a career change moment for a lot of people. Like,
I think you're right, Alex. And I am not sure where the outlet is, but if you just go through the things that we experience day to day, whether that's making media, okay, this podcast would have taken twice as many people in the past to do it. Making finance, whether that's making decks, or creating reports or aggregating information or whatever, way easier than it used to be. Making meetings, I think it's today with tools and stuff, it's probably more efficient for executives to, kind of manage communications with far more people, far easier, and book meetings and stuff than it used to be. Outside of my office at Hearst, there were 2 assistant bays for, built in, and covered in wood and all that kind of stuff to support the executive in the corner. And it's like,
Did you have multiple assistants?
I had one, but there
I
were
like
2
the
bays.
multiple assistant move. The CEO of Adweek had 2 assistants while they were cutting reporters. I love that.
I mean, if you just go through it with me, like, I remember when we used to have a role that just cut up GIFs for web pages.
Yeah.
That's the resizing role that you talked about, Alex. But I think if it's like, if you go through them all, like, making media, making content, making operations, making, financial stuff, I think that you get to a place where there's, the efficiency runs out, and it's usually where people are using their hands or making food,
Yeah. Yeah. Or like fixing your plumbing I think there's a pretty massive shift because I think it's happening on so many fronts. It is not.
So the other end of this is obviously in the entry level jobs, because a lot of entry level jobs are doing production work. It's like if you go into investment banking, it's it's like putting together models, and we've already seen those get hit. I'm sure in the coding, like entry level coding employment is down, and I think young people clearly see that. And I think a lot of the angst, there's a lot of people trying to connect the dots, because we have a sort of angry, young, mostly male contingent on the right that is getting a lot of focus now, because that they are dabbling in extremes that are antisocial, to put a fine point on it. And then on the left, obviously, with the election of Mamdani, there's a question that Peter Thiel had raised a while ago in one of these great leaked emails. I love the internal tech emails site and account, because it's great to see the candid emails of these people. Peter Thiel had made the point, this is a while ago, that he was saying socialism is going to come back because these young people don't feel like they have a stake in the system. If you don't feel like you have a stake in capitalism and it's like rigged against you, you're not going to have some sort of fealty to capitalism, which is alarming many Americans, because we believe in capitalism. And Scott Galloway, who has been beating this drum about the young men, I don't think he's a media person, but I think he's a media personality, and there's a difference there. He has a new book out, Notes on Being a Man. So we're going to hear a lot about the crisis that young men are facing. Troy, you have a young man in your household. See, maybe he moved out. I don't think he's in crisis. Maybe. I had a nice dinner. I had a nice dinner with him. Yeah, he was very thoughtful. Beyond Seb, what do you think is, first of all, good for Scott for branching out into this new area. He just made it happen. I'm not sure what qualifies him necessarily for this.
Yeah, I don't know. One thing I learned from Seb is that he doesn't really, he's a little bit different, where he's a creative person and doesn't really see his value system doesn't have him moving through an organization and achieving the things that people might characterize as success or stability. But I think that there is something that shapes us as humans pretty simply, that brings kind of responsibility and accountability and structure to young people. And I try to push this on Seb, because he has been reliant on his parents for a while, and he's now in his kind of past his mid-20s, and his understanding of the system of income to expense is not perfect, in terms of like, I got to make money to pay my bills, because we've been there for him. And like having a mortgage, having a home, having children, having a sense of kind of progress and achievement are things that direct energy away from things that might not be as societally productive. And I worry about that a lot. My number one thing as a parent would be to, I do think that the first thing I did when I was 20, I bought a house. And, and I was thrust into adulthood, I was working.
You bought a house at 20?
Yeah.
What did you have, like a lucrative paper route, like when you were a teenager?
Yeah, I had a little bit of cash, and where I'm from, houses aren't that expensive. And I bought a house and I lived in it for a bit and then I rented it out. But, I got thrust into adulthood because Jillian got pregnant when I was 26 years old. And, we had a dog. And suddenly, I was like, holy shit, I'm living in Montreal and I don't make any money and I got to figure this out. And then I was just sort of like very single-minded about figuring out how to kind of do what I thought I was supposed to do, which is, provide for this group of people. And so that was hugely, hugely motivating to me. But when I look back, I think a big part of it is just who I am, like just how I kind of, like if I see just the way my brain works was just like, I need to fix this and I need to kind of need to be in control. I need to have agency in this kind of world. And I just kind of marched forward. And I think if you can't get some of the basic, if you're not having kids and you're not buying a house and you don't have investments and you have no kind of, I think it's your sort of personal obligations, but I think on the other hand, I think you can get really pessimistic about society and also change your point of view on what the role of government is in your pain. Yeah. And I think it's really troubling, to be honest.
Yeah, Alex, I want to bring you in because I think like it's actually turning at yet again, Alex, you're always like a soothsayer on this podcast is I see this turning from all the culture war issues that like young men have been told that like, they're oppressors and all that. And that's definitely like part of it. But usually it comes down to economics, right? Like, and a lot of like elite people in society love to like sort of whip up these like culture war issues to distract from the economics of it. And, and to me, it probably comes down to real estate. I think the best explanation is the American system has been set up, right or wrong, around around home ownership. The government loves to stimulate demand when it comes to home ownership, and then we wonder why housing is so freaking expensive. Well, I mean, if you're not increasing supply and you keep subsidizing demand, like what do you think is going to happen? I mean, Trump came out with this 50-year mortgage thing, which even for Trump is kind of insane. It's yet another case of the government doing something that's basically going to make housing even more unaffordable. I mean, if you just look at basic economics. But I think that is really coming to the fore. And I think that's what is being shown in the polls after Mamdani's victory. And so I think the focus now will shift from these culture issues, which certainly have a role to play, but ultimately it comes down to economics.
I mean, it does, yeah. Troy's point, like the data that came out is that the median age of a first-time buyer in 2025 is 40. And I was like, to me, that didn't sound that strange, but then you find out that like in 2020, it was 33. It was 33 years old, the median age. Like it's not that things are changing, it's that things are changing so fast. And also like, yeah, I do think that there's a pretty big shift on the rhetoric online where it is changing from culture war and on both sides to more of a kind of a class war narrative.
Yeah.
I think part of that is that, honestly, I think most Americans do want some form of welfare system. You kind of slap the word socialism on it and people hate it. But if you actually bullet list like what you're getting, people are like, oh yeah, I want that. That sounds great. I really want affordable healthcare and good public transport and child support. Yeah, that would be fantastic. But it is a problem. Some of it is definitely like, there's definitely an internet problem. The internet used to be a place, now people live on it, and it has impacted the motivation for people to gather culturally. Like church attendance is down, and this has created subcultures like that Goon Squad article of I think it was last week.
Yeah. Daniel Kolitz.
So I think it'll be
Getting has replaced church going. Is that what you're saying?
For some people.
Yes. Gooning is the new church going. Okay.
I think everybody should read that article because it's funny. But even though
It's funny, but by the way, it's probably not true.
What do you mean, the gooning?
It's just like you find a couple of gooners and it's massively overstated.
Well, I'm not saying the entire generation of young men are trapped in their goon caves.
No, but it is
24 hours a
there's enough of this going on. There's enough of a large incel.
There's a kernel
movement.
there. I mean, this is
There's a
narrative.
kernel
When he
there,
gets
and
this.
it's on the edge of a very
Media
specific
people understand their powers.
Yeah. Okay, there's certain
understand-
things
I
that, you know,
understand
there's
it
too good to
completely.
check, but this checks out. It's like the hikikomori or whatever, the shut-ins in like Japan who just play video games all day. This is like just the perverse offshoot of that.
I'm on the internet enough to understand that both, like, you know, if you read things like that, you're going to expect to go out on the street and see nobody, but in fact, people are still going to farmers markets and clubs and things like that. But also the fact that these subcultures exist and they exist for a reason. And as like you kind of remove opportunity from young people, you make everything more expensive, and you increase the wealth gap, you're going to start seeing more and more of this happening. I mean,
One
I don't know
thing
how much.
I'm doing in New York City is going out to dinner because it's too expensive. You should put that money somewhere else.
But you know what? I'm just shocked in New York City. Like the restaurants are heaving. Like this is such a weird economy, and I don't know how young people. First of all, I think every young person should try to live in New York City, like in their like 20s.
But you
It's
can
like
afford a
insane.
house, but you readily plop down like $60-$70 for brunch.
Oh my
I
God!
don't get it.
Yeah,
Becoming those like avocado toast people.
Troy. Like this is like I've heard this argument before, and that's the fallacy of this argument. You know, when you lived back in the day and you had those bicycles with a massive front wheel, and you know somebody would give you a tangerine for Christmas. Yes, you could save up instead of a meal and then buy a house. The problem is that the numbers are so astronomical. Like, hey, I'm never gonna. I could save up $30,000 a year, and maybe try that, and maybe I'll buy a 1-bedroom apartment by the time I'm 45, or I could live my fucking life and have a meal, and it won't make a fucking difference.
It seems like the
Even if
rest
it's $70.
the rest of the country has become like New York City based.
Clearly, you're not.
Where people don't get married, they have roommates into their 30s, they don't own, and you know that's how it goes here. That's
The
just
numbers are
the
just so.
trade-off.
I think to understand that, like people say, well, if you didn't, you can't hold like two versions of math in your head where you can say, well, if you stop drinking your Starbucks and your French toast for brunch, then, you know, if you did that for 5, 10 years, 15 years, you could buy a house. That is entirely not true. And oftentimes these are the little joys that these people are enjoying. And they've chosen a life of like leisure rather than trying to chase the dream of buying something that they will never be able to afford. I mean, I get that.
Yeah, I want to bring in AB, who is here, because I just want to make a brief statement where I think that this sort of goes. Is my overall theory is that most humans hate change, and that a lot of our economy and society is now downstream of a technology industry that is premised on disruption and change, and their capacity for that, it far exceeds the general populace's appetite for change. And we always see this, is that change goes too fast and then there's like a retrenchment. And I feel like we're in this period right now where the highest agency people, which are a small sliver of the environment, are reaping a ton of the rewards, and you could say rightly so, right? But these people architected the system to reward people just like them who are incredibly high agency. And I think of you, AB, because you're very high agency.
Is it a question or what?
No, it's a statement.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad. The interesting thing on the Goon, not to pull us back to the weird topic, but they do spend a lot of money on their screens. But yeah, I think the problem with the way that children are raised today.
AB finds a way to monetize.
I mean, that guy did a podcast episode. He had like 14 screens for his setup, and he was at his parents' house. And then they were asking him, "How do you tell your parents what you're doing?" I don't know what the excuse is to tell your parents you have 14 screens.
You're a day trader, obviously. That's it.
But I think that the way that children are, I mean, I have 1 3-year-old, so I'm an N of 1, but I think and he's only 3, but I think that the way that people raise children is you teach them the system. I mean, the way that I disconnected from the system is I had a business in high school, and as soon as I made more money than my teachers selling cell phones on eBay, like I kind of unplugged from listening to authority. I follow rules, but I don't let social norms guide how I live my life. And so if I read something interesting or want to talk to somebody, I just reach out.
Wait, tell me about your cell phone business in high school.
It was super simple. There was just like an arbitrage. It was super simple. There was like an arbitrage on buying cell phones from one place and selling them online. And then it turned into selling hundreds of cell phones to New York cell phone shops. And so I asked my parents for a little bit of money, and then I made a lot of money.
That's amazing. The reason Brian is asking is because we're talking about media people and what they should do next.
Exactly. This is something media people will never think about.
Yeah. I thought you were going to get into the media people conversation.
Let's get into the media people.
I don't even know if people know what a media person is, Brian. You just wrote a beautiful
so you brought up media people. So I want to give you a chance, because I seized on it because I was like, you know what? That's exactly right. There are people who are media people, and there are a lot of people who make media who are not media people. And media people are a particular species. And I was reminded of that when I read the latest Epstein emails. And Michael Wolff, of course, was there as a main character. And Michael has main character energy. But to me, Michael, who I worked for very briefly and actually I liked him as a boss, he's a media person. Like he's been banned from restaurants. And I think media people have a few characteristics. Like one is they have an innate understanding of the power of narrative. You know, Michael would always say it's like heroes and villains. You got to find your heroes and you got to find your villains. And it doesn't matter if you're covering advertising or writing about politics. It's all heroes and villains. And that's how narrative works, right? And I think media people, you know, they tend to be troublemakers. And Michael is an absolute troublemaker. And I think the best media people have that troublemaking sort of gene.
The weird thing about Michael, and it's clear from the emails, is that Michael became part of the narrative.
Right.
And all that is going to be is fodder for people that hate journalists. Because it was clear he wasn't reporting on it, man. He was instigating.
Right.
He was writing the story from within the story.
Yes. So he will be excommunicated from the journalism is part of journalists are media people, but there are media people beyond journalists. So for instance, like Olivia Nuzzi, she's a media person without a doubt. Like she, was involved in a scandal of trading nudes. I don't know if they were one way or both way nudes with RFK Jr. He's remaking Help.
That guy's had a life, huh?
Yeah, he's had a life. He's had a lived life.
Yeah.
No, but that's the third rail poison of a media person when you become part of the narrative, as she did, and then it's over.
No, she's still a media person.
Well,
I think
that chapter was over.
I mean, she might be excommunicated from journalism.
This is a trigger thing for me. This media person thing is a trigger because I'm not a media person. I maybe
you have one foot in the media people world, and you have one foot.
You're a media person, Brian,
in
and
the
arbitrage
world.
No, I mean you're able to see the bigger story and the facts, and I admire it. What I'm interested in is fake media people, and when fake media people get power in media organizations. So when you're running a media company, right, there's basically 4 tracks. If you're an owner of media and you want to put a CEO in, who are you going to pick? Are you going to pick the elevated sales guy, the elevated edit person, the elevated ops person, or the elevated tech person? You pick, right? Because they all come with strengths and weaknesses, right? Or are you going to try to articulate something where the power is somehow balanced, as it has been in, say, the beautiful kind of architecture of a magazine, where the magazine world there was an editor and there was a publisher, and they balanced each other out. And in some magazines, one had more power than another, depending on the nature of the magazine. If it was publisher-led, it was probably an ad-led publication. If it was editor-led, like a New Yorker or a New York Times or something, it was a subscription publication, right? And what we've seen when media opened up to everybody is a lot of fake media people became media people, right? Like all the Silicon Valley guys, like A16 or Elon, decided that they were media people, but they're not. They're
not media people. They use media, but they're not media people.
Well, not only are they way too self-interested, to be media
But they think
people.
they can be. They believe they can be.
Yeah, they do. The other thing that really gets me when the media thing, that this is a real trigger for me, is that sort of abetted by the need to sell media or confused by what people that consume media actually do, want, need, etc., they endeavor to create things that they think are media. And that's where your conversations on this podcast around product and media really get me. Because actually product and media doesn't really matter. The media matters, right? Like the AI chatbot on the Time webpage, it doesn't matter, right? The CMS reconfiguration that makes your editor slightly more efficient doesn't matter. The page design kind of matters sometimes, but doesn't really matter.
It's okay. You don't have to say that because I'm in the room. It's fine.
No, it just doesn't matter.
I disagree with you.
And what matters when you want to transform a media brand is the content. The media people have to do the work.
You're being selective about what you're choosing to define as kind of having a product methodology to looking at media. I think media, since the beginning of time, was... But it was always tied to innovation, right? Since the printing press and everything like that. And like this ability to figure out how to create content that exists within a technology or via technology is there. And I think media, there is a lot of great product development that
rare
happens
is
in
the
media.
occasion when you as a media practitioner or media leader have the ability to shape the way someone consumes media on the internet. Now, if you're a platform owner, you have that opportunity, right? But what we created with everybody, that had a tiny sliver of attention but had their own interface to media, is we wanted to reinvent it to make it work better, right? And I understand the imperative to want to make it work better, but it's like reinventing paper because you're a magazine company. It doesn't make any sense. It's like very few people can influence how we consume media, and it's certainly not happening at the magazine brand or the media brand level. Maybe if you're the New York Times, you have gravity in the relationship between the consumer and in your platform that you can shape that, and product becomes really important. But for the rest of media companies, just go on Substack. I mean, that's the truth of it. And
it's packaging, right? I mean, packaging is important, and I think it was an incredibly important part of media when media was a bundled product. But what happened is technology decentralized media and disaggregated it.
That's packaging a story.
No, I mean packaging as in, so media people were very good at making at the packaging of like magazines, right? That takes taste, that takes discernment, and media people have taste and discernment if they're really good, depending on their field. But I think what you're saying is that has been sort of stripped away, and now it's down to, it's just the stuff. The thing is like the content that you're creating. And so to me, like the organizations will inevitably, and I'm biased in this, should be run by media people, not financializers.
Yes.
No offense to David Zaslav. I know we give him a lot of laurels.
We all agree there.
Podcast.
The product is the content.
Is he a media person?
The product is the format. The product is the packaging of the story. It's different in video than it is in text, but the product is the content. I get it. And what media people, them when you see them. They care about narrative. They care about tension. They're shameless in the pursuit of getting with the thing.
Tina Brown is a media person, I would say.
I would be scared if a media person in your context ran a media company. To me, it's like the bifurcation of duties that newspapers used to have, which is you have an editor. Obviously, it's not editorial content, but it's like you have a content person, then you have someone actually managing, generating revenue.
Yeah, but
because
I think it's just a matter of, like Troy was saying, the power dynamic, right? Like a lot of times within media organizations, non-media people are usually non-media people are calling the shots. Someone from sales is calling the shots. Like they get elevated to the CEO. And I just think that more media models will the strongest ones will be DTC models, right? And in that DTC world, you better be able to make the product. I mean, I go back to Elon Musk, had said that technical people need to run software departments because it's like having a cavalry captain who can't ride a horse. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean you have to be like a quote unquote writer to be, that's the worst.
I mean, 100% agree. I think at Airbnb, we used to call those player coaches. Definitely not my term because it's not like I don't use sports analogies, but look, we all agree. And AB, you said something about media people being more emotional. Look, these CEOs, these people in leadership positions are being paid handsomely. And I think it is not too much to ask for somebody to be a media person that is also business, that has business savvy and that has product technology savviness as well, right? And I think like we split up these roles like they're different hats to wear. And absolutely, I think a media company should be run by somebody who's a media person. But turns out that person should also have all of these other qualities. And that's why you get the big payoff. And the problem when you don't do that is that, the 20% that you're good at becomes your 100%. And that gets projected across the company. So a person that only thinks about content and has grown up in an era where they only made videos or tech stuff will not be able to kind of grab onto the innovation that's happening in technology and product and might not be great at business. But I don't think it's impossible to find people who are good at three. I think Troy is. I think actually, Troy, like we disagree on this, but I think you are. I think you're a media person that is like, a good business leader and has some tech savvy.
Yeah, maybe Little League, Alex, but
you're no Zaslav, but
that is true. We agree on that.
No, but it's really interesting. What's interesting is all of these people who either have attempted to become media people or become media people, right? So I think you made an interesting point about Galloway being not really being a media person, but media personality. The Pope is becoming a media person. Like
I think he is. I was early on that. I want my laurels.
The head of a venture capital firm, private equity firm, venture capital firm, whatever, is sparring with the Pope.
Mark Andreessen.
Mark Andreessen and the Pope. And Mark Andreessen is using an interview from GQ to make fun of the Pope. What the actual fuck is going on?
May you live in interesting times. Jesus.
Am I right? Did I characterize it wrong, Brian?
I think you characterized that completely correctly. The Pope is getting frisky on X. He's a media person, so he knows he's got to go and do combat. And he's basically reminding, he sent out a tweet where he reminded technology leaders that as they're creating AI, that they should put the human at the center. This is the heart of Christian theology. Kind of makes sense for a pope to be that. And Mark Andreessen responded with a Sydney Sweeney meme that I won't even go into describing because I don't totally understand.
Yeah, but it was basically Sydney Sweeney shutting down the pernicious GQ interviewer and Mark making some weird point with it. I don't even understand.
Well, I think this is part of Silicon Valley has created a parallel media ecosystem that is not run by media people because media people are, as I said, troublemakers. They always want to be the kid that says that the emperor is butt naked. This is not good for business. Silicon Valley really confuses to me media for attention. And they've created these attention machines that are very different than media. That's why media people are not as successful in the current media system because the media system is really an attention economy. And that rewards the information entrepreneurs, the audience carnival barkers. And that's where I would say Scott is more in that area than like Kara Swisher is a media person. I know you might not love like all Kara, but she's a media person. She's definitely a troublemaker.
And also like a business, she's got business savvy, right? That's part of her.
Is Alex Karp a media person?
No, Alex Karp is not a media person.
So I know you, Brian, you just wrote something because I've been thinking a lot about this too, not the same terms, but because the way that I think as a creator, you get audience is you have a point of view and you have frequency, right? So, but in the term point of view is interesting because what you're saying about these attention machines is people are not actually posting their point of view. They're basically posting like bullshit commentary, right? Their feelings, like it's not well thought out things.
Well, your definition is problematic because everybody has a point of view.
well, then change the word, but you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, I think when I first started coming on here, you were like good with feedback where I didn't just say, like I had to actually think about what I was going to say. And I think I've gotten better at articulating actual ideas versus just like, oh, I heard this or I felt this. And
You're
I
not
think
yet a media person.
I'm not trying to be. I'm just saying.
One.
No, I'm just saying. I'm not. I don't want to be a media person.
What
I'm
he's
just saying.
trying to do is understand.
AB is like, I made enough money when I was a teenager to understand I don't want to be a media person.
No, because what I'm trying to discern, the reason why I'm thinking about this a lot, two things. One is like, of these creators, who actually has sustainable value, right? Who's actually has a zeitgeist, has something that Kara's been doing this now for whatever 30 years, and she's been able to like, because the funny thing with Scott Galloway, and I don't know why everyone goes and keeps seeing him, he says the same thing over and over. It's
well, he has a shtick. He has a shtick.
Well, he's a marketer, right? I mean, that's.
But at some point, we've all know about lonely people, and it's like, think maybe he doesn't have any time to think, but it's like you can move these ideas forward. Like you don't have to give me the same PowerPoint that you gave 6 months ago. And so, but Kara changes, and right. There's an evolution of the code conference. There's an evolution of where she worked. There's an evolution of her friends and how she thought about these different things. And I think Trump changed it a little bit to the worse, but otherwise she was always relevant because she had opportunities to talk to the smartest people. And she knew what was happening before the news covered it. So even though she was a journalist, she could talk in like a very elevated way that understood the nuances of the industry she was in. And so you don't have to have a point of view if you're just a journalist. But I think that what's making some of these creators better than just getting the fame of the 15 minutes is like, how do they create lasting power? And it's an ability to post frequently, to be able to do a lot of these things on your own. So even if you join an organization, you're still able to control.
I agree, AB, but there's a really rare intangible. It's sort of like, what is an artist? An artist is a person that can interpret the world and make you feel something. And I think it's really rarefied. And I think that media people also have to have this kind of elusive understanding of format. And like, for example, I think Michael Wolff has that. Like his combination of like, I don't know what it is it's Architectural's Digest meets what?
Oh, his charming Instagram account.
Meets the FT or meets some common, like kind of, it's different than the FT. But anyway, it's this format that actually just works. It's just good media. You might tire of it, but it's good media. And you see, I was talking to a friend this morning, my friend Joe Heath, who I've often referred to on this podcast as the professor, as a philosophy professor from a very smart guy from University of Toronto. And I got up this morning and I was reading the FT, and Joe was front and center in the first article I read, because Joe made a comment about populism being a useful construct for people. Even if it's not right, it doesn't matter. It's easy to understand as a consumer of the message. Anyway, Joe was quoted because he's been writing about these kinds of things for years. And Joe got on the phone with me this morning. You'll love this, Brian. He said, something has happened to me since I got on Substack. And he said, Substack is my medium. And he's like, I'm getting notes from like world leaders. I'm getting notes from, the editors of the biggest newspapers. And no one ever paid attention to me before. And so he's extraordinarily good at the written argument. He's been doing it his whole life. He's really good at it. So Substack is his medium. And I was reminded of like format and medium I listened to Pivot in Toronto. Pivot has been doing a live tour and they're on the road. And it strikes me that putting people in front of a live audience creates a strong imperative to perform. This is like vaudeville, right? You have to perform. Mm-hmm. And to me, that stands in kind of stark contrast to what a podcast is. And so sometimes maybe it works, but sometimes it doesn't. And it was super awkward because Scott got up there and him and Kara wanted to perform. Yeah, and they weren't prepared to perform. So, you fall back into your shtick, I guess, but it worked way better in Brooklyn when they trotted out dude Curtis Silwa. As the first thing they did when they got on stage is they brought out the like cat lady mayor candidate. And he's weird enough to he's weird enough to be an entertainer. Like he's just an interesting character. And so the thing kind of worked. And so I do think that media people have this really kind of art-like understanding of how to get someone's attention and how to make them feel something. And it's more than attention. And that's really rare. Emily does know how to do that, Blake. It's
Emily
not
Sundberg.
frequent. Emily Sundberg at Feed Me. It's not just frequency.
She's a media
and
person.
She's definitely a media person.
I'm not trying to dilute it. I'm just saying that there are attributes that make this work. I guess
Media people.
Let me just make one more thing. So it goes back to your agent. It's like weaving this together because Tom Freston's book is coming out next week. And so and obviously biographies are an opportunity to re-narrate what actually happens. I don't know if this really did, but when MTV was growing and getting big, he makes this point that all of the best content ideas came from people that were in their 20s and then they would age out of it. And so I think and I'm building a business, I can see this every day. It's like you have this tendency to want to control, but I think if you hire people that you trust, you like tell them how things should work, but then you want to enable them with agency to make a fuck ton of mistakes, because if they do it and the mistakes aren't that costly, typically you can move everything forward a lot faster. And so there's certain things in my business that we can't make mistakes on, but there's a lot of other things where it's good to lean in and take risks. And I think a lot of these corporates, because they're so focused on cutting costs and trying to eke out a little bit more revenue before the audience goes away, it's any of that innovation and creativity has basically been sucked out of the system. Everything is tied to, did it work the first time? Because premium content production costs a lot. And so when you think about new things, like that's why they can exist a lot easier when it's one person shooting it in their room, or a creator, which maybe has one or two producers behind the camera. But I think agency is a really important characteristic, even for employees to have at these media companies on the creative side. And so, yes, have a media person run it, but that person also needs to instill freedom in the people. Like there's an anecdote in the book that Tom was sitting in the audience at a play and someone came up with an idea for a show. And he's like, yeah, go do it. And it was like that sort of level of flexibility to just have good ideas and go try them. That's what made MTV, I guess.
Yeah, and I think there's the big risk is that in this compression, that is completely being lost in a lot of these organizations. Troy, we got a request that we weigh in on this one, so I'm gonna throw it to you. Condé Nast is in a little bit of, they're in like constant state of like, mini crisis, micro dramas and the latest one, I'm sure to non-media people, is truly ridiculous. Basically, Condé Nast finally folded Teen Vogue into Vogue. They'd already done this with Vogue Business, which I had tracked quite a bit because at my last job, we had a business of fashion and beauty publication. And I thought Vogue getting in was very interesting. And I didn't think that they would actually stick with it in B2B. And they folded these both into Vogue. Teen Vogue in 2016 had become something of a resistance publication. They wrote this well-known gaslighting article by Lauren Duca. And so it upset a lot of the media people within Condé Nast. And there is a generational divide to this, I believe. Younger media people are more activist oriented, right? And we've seen a resurgence in unions at these organizations. And so they marched on the head of HR's office in some sort of performative and ham-handed display. And then Condé Nast fired them for being hostile. And so now they're known as the Condé Four. Unpack what is going on here, Troy? This seems, to the outside, I can see this seems like fiddling while Rome burns.
I'll only tell you that I think Condé should lean into this kind of new brand as being a place of kind of endless hysteria, and that it's just become laughable at this point. And the reason I say that is
turn the cameras on.
The idea of union members storming the 43rd floor at Hearst, where my office was, is like literally is terrifying to the sort of old guard that just want everything, everybody to be happy and to go back to making media. It's like the amount of controversy only years ago, either for Hearst or for Condé, it is really something that both companies would have wanted to avoid. The things I will say are as follows. If you look, strident young journalists under the banner of a union walking up and haranguing an executive is sad. It's just sad. And they should be fired, in my opinion. I just don't think that's the way you can manage an organization. And I think the people kind of have to be accountable. I would say in Condé's defense, if you look at that company, and I know that everybody's, very eager to write the story of its, downfall. I think what Vogue has done with their live projects has been really interesting. What they did in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago with Vogue World was cool. I think that what the new editor is stacking up at Vanity Fair promises to be an interesting media publication, and I look forward to seeing it. I think that, to this day, the New Yorker is still a bastion of fine journalism and a great subscription company. I think, some of the other stuff is kind of way less important and fallen off a little bit. Bon Appetit and, Art Digest is still the same kind of thing. So I think they still have brands to the extent that they can create sort of quality and intrigue around them. I think they still do it. And we're going through a 20-year adjustment in the kind of structures of these media organizations, and it's wrenching. And to me, it's really kind of sad that it has to come to this. But I think that, albeit as a smaller company, Condé will get to the other side of it, and it's owned by a rich family, so it really doesn't matter.
That helps. I want to talk about a couple of, Alex had a hard stop, but I want to talk about a couple media format innovations. Blake, you've been...
Netflix, man.
I want to talk about Netflix, but so let's start with Netflix. Okay, so Netflix is opening this immersive experience at a great mall. King of Prussia Mall is one of the all-timers. It ranks number 1 in Philadelphia area malls in my ranking. It's above Abington Mall, the Chamonix Mall, Plymouth Meeting Mall, and several other malls that are in the Philly area. So Netflix has this immersive experience. People want to get outside. Apparently Netflix and chill is not enough. That's over. And now they're trying this immersive experience. We're seeing this across a lot of different categories. I mean, Tesla now has its own drive-in diners. We hear endlessly about loneliness and people being trapped indoors. And so this seems like it makes sense, but this is a totally different business. What do you see, Drew?
It's kind of amazing, right? It's sort of like, I walked by yesterday, it's like the ice cream museum meets Dave and Buster's. It's the parks business at Disney, I think, is like a $34 billion business, and one that fits nicely into like the kind of circle of IP exploitation. So it makes a lot of sense that they would do it. It's just, I don't know, man. Themed food doesn't seem good to me. I don't know why people want fucking themed food. Like, mini golf is kind of fun, but just go to a mini golf place. I'd like to go, see a movie, but I don't want like a bunch of junk around it. It's not for me. It's not for me. And I get that they want to exploit Squid Games and shit, but like, it's kind of sad that the state of the world, it really is like, if you want to look at it thematically, the Netflix ice cream museum has replaced the department store in your mall. Okay. And I don't think it's going to last. I think it'll be there for a little while and then they'll find an elegant way of backing out of it. I don't know if like puzzle rooms and mini golf and like shitty hamburgers themed around, Netflix series is a long lasting proposition. I don't know why people don't want like real craft, like someone who knows how to make food and real community, because this doesn't strike me as either. And I don't know why people want to go to the fucking Tesla diner or the Netflix thing. To me, it's the same thing as media people. If you want to tie it back, this is experiences cosplaying as real experiences. These aren't real experiences. This is garbage. Listen,
it's marketing.
When you go to, I'm not a Disney guy. I went to Disney once and I paid like whatever, 10 grand for the back of the lot access and all that shit. And it was kind of fun to go on like the Avatar ride. But the thing about Disneyland is like, there's insane craft in that experience, in the rides, in like the environments. It doesn't feel like a pop-up at the mall. I don't think as a format that it's going to last. That would be my take.
Yeah, if Mr. Beast couldn't make the Beast Burger work, which is like an innovative way to deliver, because like you need scale to make this shit Otherwise, it's a waste of money. I think what was interesting in the Netflix media kit was their focus. They had like 3 or 5 value or sort of triggers to get advertisers to advertise with them. And obviously they talked about scale, data tracking, all this stuff. But events was actually not the stuff that you're talking about, Troy, but like the boxing stuff. And so I think there is in-person live activations that can have a good experience and they can capture significant advertising dollars. Effectively like having mini Super Bowl like activations where, because the brands allocate money across.
I mean, I don't think we should,
segments.
AB, I don't think we should conflate a live boxing event with like,
No, I'm not conflating it.
room.
I'm just saying it was interesting to me where 3 years ago, I don't think we would have thought, oh, they partnered with Jake Paul to do these fake boxing tournament or whatever they're called. And that's like number 4 out of the 5 things that they're going to market with for their advertising product. I think it's good. I mean, they're pulling the format from HBO, and HBO made boxing so significant. And obviously the UFC is a good signal that there's value there.
Ryan, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, one other thing I want to bring in is Justin Bieber is now like a Twitch streamer. And this is a commentary maybe on the economics of media people face, because he's now on Twitch. You can see him skateboarding, playing games, maybe playing some music.
He's carving pumpkins on Twitch.
He's carving pumpkins. I don't know. Maybe this is sad. Maybe this is the way it is. But I think there was an interesting Instagram that you had sent around that made the point that the economics of streaming sucks so much that if you're an artist these days, you have to constantly tour. And there is like a connection, honestly, to publishing. I mean, you might not want to be on the podcast tour, but like, let's be real. Like that's what you got to do these days to make money. I was on tour for nearly a decade as part of a B2B business because events were what paid the bills. And maybe this is a way to not be on tour all the time, but to have a always on connection with fans. Look, some people I read one review that said it was, incredibly boring. Did you check out the Justin Bieber stream, Troy?
I think the numbers, Brian, are like 300 grand for 83 million streams on Spotify. And I think that if you're an artist, you want to pull yourself out of a construct where you have absolutely no control. You have no control through your record company, through your management, or through the streaming companies. And you want to show a side of you that's bigger than music. And you want a life that isn't entirely dependent on being Celine Dion in Las Vegas. I think that this is maybe a way that someone famous, can kind of show multidimensionality and get some agency back and, find a way to drive some economics at the same time. I have no idea how fandoms consume media and why someone would want to watch Justin Bieber feel sorry for himself on a live Twitch stream. Like it just doesn't make sense to me, but I get that people love the guy. So, but yeah. It does say something about the need for music, like people in the music industry, particularly at that tier, to change the business model.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to good product.
Good product. You have one, I think.
You can go. I was just filling in. Mine are random.
Well, this one is kind of funny because, we're getting right down to the feature level on the iPhone. And I'm using my iPhone for something that I'm sharing with my kids all the time that I like a lot. And so if you hold your thumb down on the home screen, you can customize that screen. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So if you hold your thumb down and you customize it, first of all, you can change I'm into type, but you can create this beautiful condensed typeface on the clock. What's more interesting is it will automatically sit behind elements in the photo that's uploaded. So the AI or whatever's doing it will take your photo and put half of the type behind the mountain, which is really aesthetically pleasing. But more importantly, the really nice feature is you can select your photos. You can select one of 4 categories like environments, people, pets, landscapes. And under people, what then happens is there's another menu that allows you to select individual people from your photo library. So it's going in with AI, it's picking all the people that, you have repeated photos of that it recognizes, and you can select all the people that you want appearing on your phone every day. And it's a really nice feature because I'm reminded of, I have a whole library of really old photos of my kids, and they turn up every 10 minutes on my phone. It sounds like a screensaver, I know, but it's much better than that. It's really, really cool. Like, so it's using AI in a good way. It's picking from your photo library in a way that makes this really relevant, and it's incredibly well executed.
But you find this exciting? I find everything to do with phones like awful. Like I don't believe. I believe that most people want less
look
time
at
on
it
their
as
phones.
is it exciting
and
or not,
any new feature to me is, oh God, here they are again trying to get us to like be attached to our phones even more than we already are. And to use your term, it's sad.
Okay, so I'll give you that, but. If a feature, I don't care about the feature. I only care that my observed connection with it was wonderful and emotional. And to me, it brought back a lot of really good memories when my kids were young and we lived in California.
Okay, that's fair.
And so that's what technology is supposed to do. It's supposed to make your life better. And that was a positive thing. So I like that.
That's good.
What did you have in your little bag of tricks?
Oh, well, I mean, I got back to, one of the things that I've noticed, I got back to New York City the other day, and a couple of things. One is the Christmas, I'm Andy Rooney, but like, the holiday season used to begin after Thanksgiving, and now it begins after Halloween. Christmas lights are up. They're up in Miami. They're up in New York. You go everywhere, and it feels like it's like mid-December around New York. And it's been colder here. At least for me. I'd been in Miami, which is always nice. I think New York is I like the seasons as part of New York. Maybe not all the time, not in February. But one of the enduring features, because I live in Lower Manhattan, is the steam vents, which is a New York City oddity that I never see in other cities. And those are the giant orange cones in which plumes of steam are released into the air and create quite a nice cinematic analog landscape that to me it's very New York. New York I know people are saying again, New York's going to die.
They have those in Philly? They don't have those in Philly.
I don't remember seeing, like New York is.
They don't have them in Regina, I'll guarantee that.
Well, New York is unique in that it got centralized heating very early. And because I live down like in the financial district, this is the oldest part of Manhattan, there's still, the steam heat is a unique feature of New York City, and that most people got centralized heating later. And so it's more modern. Whereas people not only pay a ton of money to live in New York City, but they have these, anyone who's lived in New York City long enough has had some kind of like, it's normal to have a radiator that is 1 trillion degrees and you can't go anywhere near like have you ever had one of those poles, those like steam heat poles that like is like hotter than the surface of the sun?
Yeah.
And they create lots of noise. But anyway,
what's the big problem? The cones spouting steam?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's like, it creates a great, it creates texture to the urban landscape.
Awesome. That's it for this episode of People vs. Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
All right. Should we leave it there?
All right.